What's up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 16 of All About Millennials, a show for 80s and 90s babies by 80s and 90s babies. Excuse me for that. But, hey, usually it's me and Kaehla, but this week, and as of last week, we just opted to go our little bit of separate ways because this week is the week that I've kind of been thinking about for, I don't know, probably the last, couple of months. Because July to me has always been that 1 month of just reflection, appreciation, as was touched about in my church on Sunday. And with that, I'm just grateful. And for me, this week celebrates 8 years of just getting my head on straight. And so what I thought to do this week was just bring on and just touch on one of those topics that are very key and very intriguing to my heart, and just go for it. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce one of my dear friends and mentors who kind of in turn saved my life, Mr. Steve Cannon of Rise, Indiana. If we can get the mute button ready. What's up, bro?
Hey, what's going on, man? It's good to see you again, and appreciate you having me on. It's good talking with you.
I mean, it's crazy. Did you think about 8 years ago that I would have even gotten to even make it out of Indiana, let alone in LA, and doing what I set out to do creatively and still a part of any thing spiritually?
Well, actually, I'm not surprised. I mean, you have, been a person that has shown tremendous character and persevered through a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties, and one of the things I've, always appreciated about you since getting to know you, is the whole idea of you just never let anything, keep you from accomplishing your goals. And, and so, no, I'm not surprised, man. That I'm not surprised about what you're doing. And because, hey, it's all about character. And you've shown that, throughout your life. And so I'm not surprised, with what you're doing even now.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. And to be honest, I was thinking about and I don't know how my brain, and I was thinking about anniversaries. Next month is 10 years for the ministry that was kind of started up by you in downtown Indianapolis, the campus ministry, I should say. Am I too far off from that? And the story of how what's now Alpha Omega Indianapolis IUPUI kind of got created?
Yeah, well, I think that, there was, oh man, I'm trying to remember who was leading it before me. And, but you're not too far off base. And, but honestly, I'm having a little bit of a memory moment at the moment.
I mean, it happens. And to be honest, I think just coming from, and I know my background was more Baptist turned to Methodist, and yours was Catholic, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and just going from there, it's like understanding that I don't want to use the term all lives matter, but there's no real division outside of what's in the Bible when it comes to just Christianity, and taking that to a college and really public college environment. Not to say private colleges aren't important too, because full cell grad, hello. But
Mm.
yeah, it makes it a lot easier. But I think I saw a lot of growth even within the ministry over the years, which I think when we started, it was like we just kept in our own little bubble, and it was like very quiet to not being in just one corner of the campus center. We just met, and I'm surprised there's not a Starbucks anywhere in your hand, and I don't have some coffee in my system right now. And for those that don't know, that was like our usual spot, just to have our Bible studies and just chat for like what, hours on end. I think you were almost turned Starbucks into a mini office in the corner of Barnes and Noble.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I mean, I've been going to Barnes and Nobles for, oh my gosh, ever since my, I don't know, probably 15 years. And it's one of those places that I get away to, sort of escape and read, think, study. And so yeah, that was just one of our places, man.
Yeah, so I'd like to just dive right in. And the biggest thing, and I noticed this, and looking back at eight to even 9 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, it was like way less diverse, especially now. And there was one reason particularly, and I told you this offline, if it wasn't for you, I don't think I would have even given it a shot because of the lack of diversity. And there were things that I kept hearing even in my studies up to a certain point to where I'm like, am I just hearing the same song and dance over and over of I'm trying to understand, but yet when it comes to even planning something, how do you go about just going forth and getting away from just that one marketed ethnic group or one gender? Because it's like you start something, it's almost like you network within your own race or your own gender, which is totally fine. But as we both know, like our faith and really in like our stories, it's like that's only part of the situation, you know?
Sure. Yeah. Well, building a diverse ministry, is something I believe that is something that God does, through individuals that are committed to the Great Commission. The Great Commission. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. He said, go and make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Teach them to obey everything I've commanded you, and surely I'll be with you always to the very end of the age. And our congregation has been, very committed to that. And, that, hey, everybody matters. And, from God's perspective, God is, it's obvious that everyone matters. And we serve and he's obviously very diverse. I mean, if we look at the planet is diverse. And so humanity is diverse. And that's the beautiful thing about one of the beautiful things about our congregation. I mean, we just here in Indianapolis, a church of 400 people, we have 27 different nations represented. And and it's a beautiful thing. So and I think that so first and foremost, I mean, we attribute that type of diversity to God. And but as you and I studied from the very, very beginning, some 8 years ago, um, that as a congregation, we were and still are very, very committed, to the Great Commission. And it doesn't matter who. We are to reach out to people, period. And that's what we've done.
And I really do appreciate that, because that, to me, is one of the things that sold me. And I know my viewers and listeners are kind of tired of everything, and why Kaehla and I have not met over like the last couple of weeks because of everything that's going on in current events. But there was one that I alluded to it a little bit offline, and that was because I know there's a campus ministry with Purdue, there's one with IUPUI where I, go figure, got my start, one with IU Bloomington and then one in Muncie. However, the one in Muncie with Ball State, that situation, which was very public, of the, I would say, racist instructor calling on a student, because you guys just planted that ministry, what?
Yeah, it was just a few months ago. Just a few months.
Last fall, I believe, fall 2019. Yeah. And then all the news, like, I think within that semester, for backstory on, with the whole student getting called for not even wanting, just not wanting to get up and move his seat, got the police called on him, which basically should have just been kicked out the class at the most. That's the most you could probably do, and it'd be okay. But to get someone called the police on, turn into a massive protest. And then going into that, and since we are on the topic of diversity, and I love the brothers that are over there that are leading that ministry. However, and this is one of those things, as I kind of alluded to, when it comes to situations like that, and with race, especially now, it's like, do I really want to listen or hear out someone that's not of my ethnicity in those scenarios? So as a senior pastor, what's your take on everything with it's not worth taking even the shot on?
I'm not familiar with the situation of you said a person getting kicked off, getting the police called on them.
Yeah, it was like mid last semester, as in last fall, and basically they had the teacher removed for about a month, to where it was virtually protests. And then I wish I would have said something sooner and talked to you about it.
Yeah.
Because my heart was going out to the guys that are leading that ministry, because I know from firsthand experience, especially when it comes to discriminatory situations and racial stuff, it's like, I'm not going to hear anybody out, but yet we're trying to look out for each other and just be there as fellow Christians. But it's like one of those things you can't really avoid. I'll send you the this.
Yeah, you'll have to send me the you have to send me the details, because I can't really speak on it, because I'm not really familiar with exactly what happened. So
yeah, but outside of that, it's like situations of like discrimination like happen almost, I would say, hourly at this point.
Sure.
Even though it's like been popularized, and it's just weird. But when you see someone on straight up a campus that has been feeling like, oh, the system or something's kind of wronged me on a racial and ethnic front, what would you say to someone that's just in those like droughts, that feel like, I can't really trust you because someone within your race and ethnicity, or even your gender, has truly wronged me, to where I don't feel like trusting you
Mm.
regardless of it. So that's where my heart was going for like I think a month after I found out, because I just felt that bad for that entire ministry.
Yeah, I think that you know, in the times that I have, well, I'll just speak, you know, personally, you know.
And I think he just cut out, guys. We're gonna have to give it a couple seconds. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes this happens. We all know tech failure, phone and internet. But we are back. And just to get back onto, and not only do I have one of my mentors here, but I also have what some would say is my little brother spiritually. And if he tries to deny it, whose are we celebrating today and whose are we celebrating next Friday?
That's right. You have 10 days. You have 10 days on me.
Quit breaking kayfabe, boy. I have 7. And aren't you the engineer? I have 7.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Oh, good grief. But yeah, so to catch you up to speed, Renzo, Steve and I have been touching on just over, and I don't know if you remember the whole situation that happened in Muncie late last year to early this year with the instructor that was pretty much just being a racial goofball and called the cops on a student for not wanting to get, basically not wanting to Rosa Parks their own seat.
Yeah, I heard about that on the news.
Yeah, and it got to the point where there were protests, and so right before the tech issue that happened, I was asking Steve, like, from a pastor's perspective, what would you say is more so how do you even think about going about what's for us how do you even approach, like, even reaching out to someone of an different ethnicity or a different gender that feels like they've been wrongly discriminated against? And in those cases, because within that same semester that happened, a new campus ministry within the state of Indy through the church got planted. And I love the brothers, but neither brother was of the ethnicity that was wrong.
Well, I think each person, anytime, someone experiences, discrimination, any form of injustice, it needs to be acknowledged. People need to be heard. Their experiences need to be validated, and we need to seek to understand, in terms of what the person has gone through. And I think anybody that has suffered any type of discrimination is going to understand that, because that person's experience is real to them. And so the thing that you don't want to do is, you don't want to be dismissive. You don't want to just, not hear someone's story. I mean, we need to, seek to understand, as best we can, what someone has gone through. And, as disciples of Jesus, I mean, when those type of things have happened to me, I've had to make some intentional choices, to pray for the person that may have, done something like that. to me. I've had to, seek to continue to try to reach out. The answer is the answer is love.
Yep.
It is. The answer is love. We see in the life of Jesus Christ someone who he was discriminated against. He suffered injustice. There were threats that were made on his life, and ultimately, Jesus was killed for what he believed. But in the face of all of that injustice, Jesus chose, and you see this even as he was hanging from a cross. I mean, he chose to love, he chose to pray, and he chose to forgive his persecutors. And so, and I think his is the perfect example of how we need to be, in the midst of, if we're going through something like that, ourselves. So those are just a few thoughts.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Rob. And it's very refreshing to hear that, because it's been one of those things, I think, for me, and I don't know if this was true for you, Renzo, because what spirit for the viewers and listeners, and even for me, because sometimes I don't think I asked you, because I don't think I met you until your baptism, when everybody and their mother was actually talking to you, when mine, I preferred just crickets. But so I legit, when you don't even invite your own mom, and there is a reason, and the reason was I needed to know in my heart and understand in my heart that I was doing this not to please someone else. And that's the one thing I do appreciate and still value 8 years later, that my own faith and walk with God is truly by choice and just by his grace. But in regards to you, Renzo, I know Steve grew up Catholic. I basically grew up Baptist and turned Methodist. And what were you again? Because I know you moved from Peru at what age? So
I moved from Peru when I was 8.5 years old, and I grew up Catholic as well. Yeah, similar to Steve.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not trying to dog, and I say that not to dog anybody's religion or anything. It's just like somebody just got ready for dinner.
I just had my computer open. That's all, dude.
Yeah, sorry for anybody headphone users, but they are just the goofball audio anyway. And with that, I just say that because we're all coming from different walks of life. Steve from Chicago, Renzo from Peru, me from the south side of Indianapolis, and before anybody says it, yes, I'm from graduated Warren Central proudly, but
and I'm from New York, by the way.
Well, I'm getting to some of that, because both you two knuckleheads actually have dirt on me still to this day. And through you two plus another one of the ministers could easily make 3 phone calls and pretty much just, I wouldn't say run my name through the mud, but easily give people enough ammo to last a lifetime. Whether it's through you and your relationships or through just spousal relationships. And I do have to agree with Renzo, I think growing and starting within a different ministry is just weird for us, man. And like, I think having the same sister like reach out to us was very key, and just understanding like different times in our lives to where we both like reunited and just had that, I wouldn't say instant, because it took a while, didn't it, for us to even bond up.
Yeah, I mean, we had a very diverse ministry, right? To our listeners, we're talking about, this was way back in 2012. And back then, we were diverse in terms of age. We had 18-year-olds to mid 20 somethings. And then diverse in personalities, diverse ministry in terms of school majors, culturally, I mean, you name it. It was it was a large melting pot of people. And so whenever you have, different people of different backgrounds, it's going to take a little bit of time to get to know each other in a more deeper way. Um, Whenever there's differences, there's bound to be a little bit of friction in the beginning, at least, before you kind of, just grow together as a family that we were. And yeah, so.
Which is was refreshing when I think from everybody it just took a while to get to know each other, but also just that time and just to understand like, oh, these are your strengths, these are our strengths. Because I think even with what you and I were doing was just knowing where we could easily like shine and just organization to putting stuff in just leading, almost that and I know it's going to be very odd that I'm using a Mortal Kombat reference on this episode specifically, but it almost felt like the Sub-Zero Scorpion relationship when it came to leadership. And I see you laughing, Renzo, but it's the truth, man. I was always the kind of rebel that knew, like, did things calculated, but knew the pros and cons. But then I felt like you knew what you were doing and then took the right advice and took that and ran with it, which I really do commend you for. But what would you say was the hardest challenge for even that? Because, and this goes for both of you, like from 2012 to I think when you left at what? You finished 2017, right? Because I know I finished like 2015 and then left 2016.
I actually finished in the winter of 2016. Sorry, well, at the end of the fall semester of 2016, before I moved out to Virginia.
But you left, I'm saying when you left though, because I left 2016 and then you left what, 2017?
Well, I technically left in December of 2016, and I moved to Virginia in January of 2017.
Okay. Yeah. But still about 4 years and half of that. And definitely with the foundation, and to be honest, there would be no, I would say, young professionals ministry without like the lessons that we got from Steve to now. But what was from both of you the hardest challenges, especially with a different, just a everlasting revolving door to even go through and just lead and disciple and minister to that our crazy diverse group of people, and saying someone to even have someone new, as we kind of did, like almost semester-ish from
I think from my experience, when we were used to being involved with campus ministry. My wife and I, back from 93 to 95, we had a campus ministry at Howard University in Washington, D.C. that we led. And so when you realize, that, you're only going to be working with students, 4 to 5 years before they graduate. And before they, they're going to, that they're going to be moving on. And so what you're trying to do is to give them the best that you have to offer in order to solidify, some very, very important convictions that are going to help them to move to the next phase of their life. And, so in terms of, the greatest challenge. I think that's one of the greatest, challenges in dealing with campus ministry is really helping, students to be grounded in their, develop some really great biblical convictions in the short period of time that you have to work with them. And one of the beautiful things, and I know, I chose Christ when I was 19, sophomore at Indiana State University here in, Terre Haute, Indiana. I was going through a very, very difficult time in my life. I was 19, suicidal and partying and doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have been doing. But I had a couple of men that were very committed to Christ and really taught me the principles of Jesus Christ and helped me to really focus in on what it really took to be a follower of his. And it was imitating Jesus and developing some very deep convictions that turned my life around and put me in a right direction. And so, since that time, those are some of the things that we try to build into our campus students in the short period of time that we have to work with them when we were leading the IUPUI campus ministry.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, definitely everything that Steve said. I think from my perspective, one of the more difficult things was just how our particular campus was set up. So for those that don't know, um, IUPUI it's a 4-year school in Indianapolis, but it's kind of set up that a significant population of the student body is actually commuting to campus. So it's not a traditional um, 4-year school where like everybody lives, within 5 minutes from campus. It's placed right in the heart of Indianapolis, and yeah, and so a lot of the ministry, we lived all over the city of Indianapolis, and we some of us didn't have cars, and we relied on public transportation. Um,
Hello.
and
And I
it was
still
a
do.
little bit, yeah, it was a little bit tough to build that unity. But with that challenge though, I think one of the things that Steve said um, kind of just kind of showed in our group. And by that I mean, we had the conviction that, hey, we wanted to be together, we wanted to fellowship, we wanted to break bread together, we wanted to hang out together, we wanted to grow together, and just not having a car, or taking that extra time to drive to or make ourselves to events from the ministry didn't really stop us. We kind of showed the conviction that we had, um, even though it was tough at times, like um, people living as far as maybe an hour from each other at two extremes, meeting in the middle. And that was awesome just to see, just the conviction that our group had. Obviously, I think for me particularly, one of the things that was challenging was just like when I came to the ministry, I was 18, and I honestly like just didn't really know what I was doing with school, and just ministry in general. Our group was, I mean, it was, we had like, I think doubled in size that summer or tripled in size that summer. We had like 5 baptisms like the summer before my freshman year, and before that, I think there was only like a handful of people. So I think we doubled in size. So for me, it was like a little bit difficult to navigate school and navigate getting to meet all these awesome people that, as awesome as they were, they had different personalities that I had. They had different majors that I had. They had different interests that I had, and the main common thing that we had was, our our convictions and our love of God and His people, and just Christ in general. Um, so I think for me, like the first year was pretty was challenging, and just trying to navigate just entering this new phase of life, which was school and just what it means to be a Christian. So
Yeah, I totally gotta agree with you because for me, and you said that was your 2012 was your first year on campus because I thought it was always like you were kind of a sophomore just with how mature you were kind of presented and acted then.
no, no, I was 18. Appreciate that though.
I would say I would joke to joke. I would say just because of our Bible studies, at least for the guys, it was kind of hard to plan around that because we couldn't go like had to pick what restaurants and locations we sat at. But that's just the joke. But the truth, I think for me, and this goes to why one of the things that really made me enjoy like my own journey and why I opted not to have my mom at my own baptism. It was more so I needed to stop doing and relying on others, and then also recovering from just because I saw where I was going, and one of my cousins was serving time at the same time, and yet all I was doing was just hanging out, partying, and then going around. Ugh, and I still remember this night because it was my 21st birthday. Walk of shame, people. Enough said. But yeah, I think that turned my life around and just recovering from that and understanding like everybody goes through what they have to do, goes through what our struggles, but it's how we overcome and just using really our skill sets like this, like you with engineering and our net to not only network but also change lives and be the best version of ourselves. And speaking of changing lives, man, and I said like a lot of stuff has changed over the last 8 years for the three of us, which is very weird for me to even think about that. Because I still remember when Steve didn't feel like an empty nester, and when your left hand was not about to be shiny, Renzo. And I still
Yep.
have the memory from which kind of changed my spiritual outlook on things because, and it happened because of your fiance, and why I still think you have ammo on me because one of the brothers that were helping us out in like this whole campus swap. So, and I'll have to explain context on that in a second, but just reaching out and one of those trips that one of the brothers from the Purdue ministry and myself went up for a week, spring break, and just really opened my eyes to what the kingdom has, you know? And for me to even say like, oh, and that trip is part of the reason I'm in LA. I will be 100% honest because I didn't even see myself, I think in 2011, 2012, where my life was heading, I didn't see myself leaving Indiana after college. Yeah, that was about 6, 7 years ago. And that is a lie. But yeah, I really do think like, oh, and I'll just say this, heck, I'm proud of you guys and very appreciative because what else can easily go there? And of course, I would have enjoyed to have all six of us just for like a quote unquote reunion of our initial class, but I understand 3 different time zones, life happens, and I'm just grateful for everything. But the biggest highlight, and I know for the sake of time, I just want to be respectful of everybody's schedule. And what would you guys say was your biggest like motivating biggest highlight from the time in the ministry, as well as one takeaway for my audience?
I think for me, the thing that and it's why I do campus ministry, or did campus ministry. I've since moved on to married ministry, but it's just seeing change lives. And so many times we come into people's lives, where there may be insecurity, there may be a lack of a lack of focus, a confusion. People are needing guidance. They're going through some type of a traumatic event in their life, and they just they're somewhat lost. And so for me, it's helping people to get directed and get centered, and to develop some a relationship with God, whereas before they didn't have one, or maybe they weren't totally committed, in the way that God would have them to be. And so what I found time and time again is that when people truly commit themselves to the principles of Jesus Christ, they find what they're looking for. And so if I was going to give your audience one big takeaway, I would say to really take if you've never done this, is to take an honest look at Jesus Christ and his principles, what he teaches, what he taught, how he lived, and try to, and commit yourself to applying that. And what I've seen over the last 40 years, for example, I just got finished marrying a couple, in Michigan. And what I was sharing with them is that I told them, I said, what I'm going to share with you is not theory. This is what works. Every married couple that, my wife and I have, counseled.
Renzo, wear earplugs while you're saying this. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
I'm sorry?
It may be some spoilers since you're leading his wedding.
No. Renzo, he already knows we're doing their premarital counseling and all that type of stuff. But my point being is that every couple that has applied and been fiercely committed to the principles of Christ have had a fulfilling and a marriage that is fulfilling, and they find what they're looking for. And so that's what I would encourage, your listeners, take an honest look at Jesus Christ and his principles and apply those.
And Renzo?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite, or I think, can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I answer it.
So what was one of your biggest highlights before 2016, 2017? And then also, what's any word of advice?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think one of my biggest highlights is from just our time in campus ministry, was the friendships that I made during that time. Obviously, so I remember in I think it was 2014, I was having a hard time in ministry, in the campus ministry. And I really felt that I didn't really have the deep friendship in our ministry.
Hey, Stephen, mute yourself because I think there's like a weird echo.
Yeah, and while I have that break, I am going to have to leave in about 2 minutes.
That's why I'm trying to sign it off real quick.
And so like I was just praying for deep friendships. And I remember like that summer, like I was starting to get closer with, brothers, yourself included. And even Aaron, who is this guy, he became a Christian, and studied the Bible with him. He became one of my best friends, and even now, like I'm getting married in September, and he's going to be in my wedding. And I just remember like looking back at that prayer, because I was wanting to like transfer schools. Like I was like, man, like I want to be at Purdue, or I want to be in UW-Madison. Like I visited those schools, and like it's awesome. Like those people like think like me, and like but like God was definitely helping me in shaping me in ways that I didn't really know that I needed to be shaped. And definitely I prayed for deeper friendships, and I got them with the people that were already there in the ministry, but also just with new people, even studying the Bible with Aaron, and kind of what Steve was saying, just seeing like where he was at, and how God really was molding him, and softening his heart, and he decided to make Jesus Lord of his life. So I would say like the biggest highlights would be just the people that I've met. Obviously, I met you, Donaze. I met Aaron. I met who's going to be my future wife in campus ministry. I mean, she was out of campus, but she came into our leadership group in 2016.
You sure you didn't want to just go to Purdue because of your fiance, or
no, she was dating somebody else at the time, so I wouldn't have worked out. And then I think a piece of advice, just really quick, I know we're running out of time, is I would say just something similar along the lines as Steve said. Like imitating when you read the Bible, when you read the life of Jesus Christ, you just can't put that book down and say, hey, Jesus is not worth following, because he is. And I just think about how, like, if we truly follow and strive to live out the life that Jesus kind of outlines for us, with the foundation being just love, right? We'll see our lives be transformed. It's just as simple as that. So for everybody that's listening out there, I would just urge you guys, like, hey, like pick up that Bible, pick up that book that you haven't read in a while, if that's been the case, because I think Jesus says, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that's just what I would tell our audience.
I know this. Thanks again, guys, and I know this has been a very spiritually charged episode, but at the end of the day, I don't care, because that's kind of who I am. That's kind of who I am, and I am so grateful and appreciative. I gotta thank Renzo and Steve for just taking the time to really just, I would say, entertain me on this 8-year anniversary of me just cleaning my stinking life. But before I send you both off, is there anything that either you two would love to plug real quick, other than Sunday service, which Rise Indiana on Facebook, 10:30 Eastern, or did I get the time wrong?
10:30 Eastern.
And then 11 o'clock Pacific, Turning Point LA on YouTube and Facebook. Am I missing anything else, guys, or?
You said it all?
What about you, Steve? And you're muted again.
I think you lost Steve.
No, we didn't lose him. He just muted.
Thank you for inviting me on, man. It's just been great spending time with you.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me on, man. It's been great spending time with you.
All right. Much love, guys. And till then, Kaehla and I are going to be back next week. Much love, guys. And good night. TTFN.